Good morning. As I said before, my name is Linda Rickman. I am with the provincial government in Manitoba, working in southwestern Manitoba, small town. This morning's webinar is Why Lean Succeeds Both in Private and Public Sectors. We have two presenters, Adil, Dalal, and Bart Jennings. Lean is no longer a tool utilized in specific industry sectors. Lean has universal applications in both private and public sectors due to the immense benefits it provides in terms of gains in efficiencies, cost reductions, and most important, in positive cultural change. The Austin Water Utility has, through various city managers' efforts, been involved in continuous improvement efforts since the early 1900s. In 2008, the Austin city manager hired Greg Meszaros from Fort Wayne, Indiana, as the new director for the Austin Water Utility. In 2009, Meszaros initiated a lean program in the Austin Water Utility and has been working towards making his vision a reality by changing the way a municipal utility performs. By employing lean concepts, the Austin Water Utility designated Bart Jennings to coordinate the lean effort, hired 2 internal facilitators, and conducted 5 continuous improvement projects so far, which have projected values of $2 million. Bart Jennings is one of our presenters. He is the Utility Strategic Manager for the Austin Water Utility, has been a city employee for over 32 years. Jennings was coordinator of the Austin Water Utility's previous total quality management effort and is current coordinator for the lean effort. He was also certified as a quality manager. Jennings' job duties include contract negotiation and management and customer relationship management of large industrial and wholesale customers. He frequently speaks before the Water and Wastewater Commission and Austin City Council and has addressed professional conferences about Austin water utility issues. Our first presenter today is Adil Dalal. He serves as the Chair of Education for ASQ Lean Enterprise Division and also serves as a Director of PMI Austin Chapter. He is the founder and CEO of Pinnacle Process Solutions International, an Executive Director of Lean Enterprise Technology program at St. Edward's University Professional Education Center, and an adjunct professor of project management at St. Edward's University in Austin, Texas. Adil is an internationally recognized subject matter expert in flow lean manufacturing and has been a speaker at several industry group conferences. As a lean practitioner and consultant, he has helped several corporations and executives worldwide implement successful lean strategies within their organization. Adil, would you please take over?
Thanks, Linda, and welcome to you all. Let's look at the current situation. We are all aware of the current situation, and today we all know that the R word, the recession, is becoming a reality in all aspects of our life. We all know that it has impacted both the public and the private sectors, not only in USA, but all around the world. Let's see how far this impact goes. It has gone from being an employment problem to being a matter of survival for many of us. Here in Austin and elsewhere, we have thousands of highly qualified people who are ready to do jobs which are not even considered a couple of years ago. Do you all agree that it is scary when the cartoons, which are meant to be funny, end up being a grim reality of the day? Even great leaders and executives of companies which were considered historically successful have not been spared by the recession. We all know that we have taken a deep dive from the height of surplus in 2001 to the depth of deficit in 2009, but the problem is we still do not know if we have hit rock bottom yet. In the picture, Washington's reaction says it all, doesn't it? I hope you all agree with me that it is not a time for finger pointing or finding someone to blame. We need to find some time-tested tools which can help us change the trajectory of this economy now and get us out of this deep valley. If we fail to do that, the R word, the recession, can easily become the D word or the depression and take us through some of the deepest and darkest times of our life. But let us not forget that we are the US of A. We are a land of innovators, and we are a land of thought leaders. We have overcome obstacles far greater. We have not only been the first ones to touch the moon, but have returned home safely after doing so. Can we not turn around the trajectory of this economy so we can climb up out of this valley safe and sound? I think we can, and I think we must. This is a very critical slide, and if you have any questions regarding this, please, feel free to type it in. But the first step is to ask ourselves, have we learned any lessons from going through this tough time? And I sincerely hope that the answer is yes, because if it is not, then I think we have not learned our lessons and it may be too late for us. So what is important is that the universal lesson has to be taken away from this, is that every industry and entity deals with unnecessary complexity that results in tremendous amount of waste. We have already seen the impact of complexity on how Wall Street and the mortgage industry operations have created immense opportunities for waste, fraud, and massive failures, and were at least in part responsible for this crisis, impacting the lives of millions. In the private sector too, just doing a cursory review of some of the organization's operations, manufacturing, or transactional systems using tools like value stream mapping or spaghetti mapping, it is very evident to me that there is unnecessary complexity. In the public sector, the complexity of systems, rules, and regulations can make attempting to complete even simple tasks seem like running a marathon. Monitoring, controlling, and applying metrics to complex organizations is almost trying to tame a wild beast. Even if you are successful, it will take a lot out of you. So the major downside to complexity is waste. And if I were to use a metaphor for waste, just like garbage creates environment where mosquitoes and other insects can breathe and thrive, complexity creates a similar environment where waste breathe and thrive. So according to me, complexity has a direct correlation with waste. Now let's look at the three major categories where waste commonly exists. First is complex strategy. This is an important waste, as strategy is the seed of a corporation. And we all know that if you want a healthy tree bearing abundant fruit, we need to ensure that the seed is of the best quality. Similarly, if you want your corporation to be healthy, strong, and thriving, you need to make sure that the seed of strategy is healthy too. Now, the key thing is, the more simple the strategy of an organization or entity, the more you will be able to focus on your core competencies and be more agile to maneuver through difficult times. Albert Einstein said, "Simplicity is the greatest form of sophistication." A complex strategy will not only lead to an exponential increase in complexity of the whole entity, making it prone to significantly more waste and inefficiencies. So basically, the more complex your strategy is, the more waste and inefficiencies you can expect. Let's take a look at processes. This is the common and most visible waste which exists in both public and private sectors. We will discuss process waste in details in a few slides. But the most critical waste is the combination of these two wastes, which results in the third waste we're talking about is about the people. And what I mean by that is that the first two ways results from human resources being wasted in focusing on and chasing some of the waste of the first two types, the strategy and the process waste. And what that does, it prevents our human resources for focusing on adding value to the organization. So according to me, although it's a result of the other two, it is one of the most critical ways we have today, where intelligent people are chasing after the wrong problems. So the key takeaway is that complexity breeds waste, which impacts every aspect of an entity and prevents it from operating at the optimal potential and efficiency. When times are good, we did not notice it and did not care to change. But today, when everyone is having to tighten the belt and change is being forced on us, it is becoming a painful lesson for us to learn. However, we need to learn it well, as our survival may depend on it. So here is something we need to all, hopefully we all agree on this, that each one of us have to do our part in overcoming this problem. And it all starts by taking some personal responsibility and admitting that we are all predisposed to some degree of complexity and waste in whatever we are doing currently. So if we all agree to that, then there is time for action. We all need to wage a war on waste in all areas that we have responsibilities in. Now, how can we do that? This brings us to what we call lean. And lean is the best time-tested tool which exists today for waste reduction or elimination. So what is lean? This is the definition of lean, which came from an article which was just published in ASQ Six Sigma Forum magazine. But lean is a philosophy of continuously making conscious choices to radically redefine and dynamically optimize strategy, systems, processes, and service, and add value to clients, employees, and shareholders. The focus is on creating value for the client. Now, in simple terms, lean is about consciously and methodically eliminating waste and focusing on creating value. What do you mean by value? The key thing is value is looked at from a client's point of view. So creating value has to be from the viewpoint of the client. Let me give you a quick example. We all have gone to on business trips and taken rented cars from the airport. Some of the companies, what you need to do is when you go to the airport, you have to go to their counter and you have to sign quite a few paperwork, and then you have to drive to the area where they hold the cars. You pick it up, and then when you exit, you have to show your paperwork. Now, some of the other car rental companies understand that business travelers are, pressed for time. So what they've done is created almost like an executive level of service, where as you exit the airport, you can go and to the area where they're holding the cars, and you will see your name on the board with where your car has been parked. All you do is get into the car and drive out of the lot. So basically, for business travelers, they know time is money, and what happens is when you are able to save the money for the clients, they are able to charge a little extra for their services. So customers have no problem doing that. Thus, what happens is it becomes a win-win solution for not only the company, but also for the business traveler. So this is what we call adding value and also making profits. But the most important thing is lean is a common sense tool. But the problem is that common sense is most uncommon today. I hope you agree with me on that, because everyone today is looking for the silver bullet to stop this problem. But maybe what we need is a time-tested tool, just like a spanner which is right under our noses, and all we need to do is pick it up and use it correctly to tighten the areas necessary to fix the big leak before it is too late. So why does lean succeed in both public and private sector? It's simple because lean can be applied to any process used in any industry. Can be applied to projects. We all work on several projects, and it is a universal tool which can be applied anywhere. And what it does is allows us to eliminate the waste from the three major categories of complex strategy, the process, as well as allows our human resources to focus on what is critical for the growth of our entity. So we come to some of the key tools, and when I visit companies, my first question to them is, does Tim E. Wood work there? And I get a resounding no, and they basically tell me is, we do not have anyone on our payroll with this name. And my response to them is, not only does Tim E. Wood work here, Tim E. Wood lives there. And I'm almost always met with curious and funny looks before I have to explain to them what I mean by that. So Tim E. Wood is nothing more than the transport waste, which stands for T. I is the inventory waste. M is the motion waste. E is the waste of energy. W is the waiting waste. O is the overproduction waste. Again, O is the overprocessing waste. And D is the defect waste. Now, we all can relate to these wastes to some degree in our organization. And for some of us, all of them may apply. For some of us, few of them may be applicable. But when I give this explanation for Tim E. Wood, I most certainly get a response saying, yes, Mr. Tim E. Wood definitely lives here. This brings us to a very powerful tool which is used by lean practitioners called Kaizen. Now, Kaizen is a Japanese word made up of two words which mean good change. So Kaizen is basically a team-based approach to problem solving. It is time-based. Usually it ranges from 1 to 5 days. It is objective-based and is very focused activity on getting results. So it's result-oriented. It is also action-oriented, where the whole team is focused on getting it done. And according to me, it is Deming's cycle of plan, do, check, act on steroids, because we go through this whole cycle within the framework of a Kaizen. Now, let me hand this over to Mr. Bart Jennings, who will be giving us an example of the application of this powerful tool of Kaizen in solving some critical problems at Austin Water Utility. Thank you, and I will be around to take any questions at the end.
Thank you, Adil, and good morning from Austin, Texas. So we're going to take a look at a case study focusing on water main leaks for the Austin Water Utility. Now, this is important because the estimated water loss for the utility is 3.6 billion gallons. Yes, that's with a B, per year. The case study is going to combine the results from 3 Kaizen events. Now, let's take a look at what the process is. The process that we're going to take a look at is from the actual reporting of a leak all the way through the completion of a repair of the water main. Now, if you take that major process and break it down into major components, there are 3. First, there's scheduling, which is from the time that the complaint is received to the crews leaving the service center. It's mostly composed of prep work. The second major component is responding. That's the crews leaving the service center to arrival at the site. And the third is repairing, actually fixing the water main leak. Now, we're going to be focusing on crews that are actually doing the repairs. The Austin Water Utility, just so you know, has a first responder that will go out as soon as the leak is reported and assess the leak for the required resources and equipment that are needed. They shut off the valves, stopping the water leak until the repair crews can come there. So, for these 3 teams, let's now look at the goals for the teams. They were reducing the scheduling component for a repair by 50%, increasing arrivals on site where the water main leak is to greater than 90% of the response goal, And it was to reduce the repair time by 25% for 6-inch and 8-inch water mains. And you'll see the importance of that a little bit later on. So before we start, one of the things that teams need to do is take a look at the current state, because you need to know that if your improvement efforts are going to be successful, or you find out that you're just running harder in place. So what does current state mean? That means that the data prior to the implementation of a process improvement. The current state for the scheduling component of the process is twofold. First, there's wait time. That's for one call, which is a required step to notify other utilities of work. There's a 23-hour wait for that. There's a roaming permit to work in the city's right-of-way. That's another 23 hours of waiting. Now you take a look at documentation time. There's a SharePoint database for logistics updates. That takes about 7 hours a week. Data sheets and a board, which are for facts of every job. That's 11 hours per week. And service request updates, which are log entries of parts of the process completed, which is 4.2 hours per week. So now let's take a look at the response time. Water main leaks are responded to within less than 4 hours. The number of leaks on water mains, not service levels, for 2008 was 670 water main leaks. And you can see the distribution of average response time here on the screen. Now as we start looking at the third component, repairs, let's first look at the water main size distribution. There are 3,600 miles of water mains that the Austin Water Utility owns, operates, and maintains. 75% of those you can see on the chart are 6-inch and 8-inch mains. Now out of those the 6-inch and 8-inch mains, 250 miles of that are responsible for 80% of all leaks. So obviously the Pareto principle is definitely applicable here. Moving further though, related to repairs, the repair time for 6-inch and 8-inch mains. During 2008, 525 leaks had an average repair time of 7.2 hours. So, now that we've looked at the current state for the major three components, what did we do? How did we tackle the problem? Well, first we created teams of line employees who did the work, not upper management, line employees. And the team themselves came up with the motto of time is money. So these teams only had 5 days to analyze, find solutions, and present findings to upper management, unlike our total quality management experience, which was taking months to analyze problem, and therefore there was a loss of commitment and energy during the process. So what did the teams do? A basic standard lean tool. They flowcharted the process. They used swim lanes to identify where handoffs were occurring between parties. And they would identify, as you see on the red circles there on the screen, the non-value added steps in the process. Now, as Adil talked about Tim Wood, hidden waste, I do have to say that you have to be careful when you implement the lean concepts. One of our assistant directors, as we were talking about this process, decided that what he wanted to do is have something that's eye-catching, and so he put out a poster, and it had a little red circle with a cross sign in it, and it said Tim Wood. So it was eliminating Tim Wood. Well, the problem was about a month before that, we had a stalker over at the utility, and so lots of people thought, oh my goodness, there's this guy named Tim Wood out that we have to look for. Also, adding to more complexity, there is a Tim Wood that works for the Austin Fire Department. So let's go quickly over just a few examples related to what the teams found in waste. For transportation, they looked at and found transportation of the spoils, what you dig out of the holes, and backfill materials to fill in the holes, and the transportation of that. They looked at inventory and found parts on service trucks, whether you had too much or not enough. They looked at motion, the actual travel time to and from the site itself. Additionally, they looked at waiting for repairs to be made on equipment and vehicles before departing the yard. Overproduction was shown by SharePoint job packets, dry erase boards, different ways of collecting data. Overprocessing, which I call typical bureaucracy, were rechecks and additional paperwork. And finally, defects were not completing the job. They were pulled off because it was taking too long and there was other calls coming in. What the teams had to do through this process of looking for Tim Wood is become detectives. So now we've talked about what the current state was, what the teams did. Let's now take a look at some of the improvement concepts that the teams came up with. And all of these, all 24, were accepted by upper management. So the first one I call fix it here and fix it now. The previous state was that response repair time was affected by minor repairs. So the crews would come out, they'd get their equipment, and they'd find out that the blinkers wouldn't work, or they were missing mud flaps. The vehicles would fail because they would not be able to be sent out on the road. And so what happened is you had to send that vehicle all the way over to the far side of our service area to a single service center. What did the teams recommend? The teams recommended adding parts to our own inventory, and the crews make minor repairs instead of sending it all the way over to the mechanics. They eliminated, therefore, the waste of transportation and waiting. The second one I call doing more and doing less. They eliminated duplicative documentation processes. You know, when a repair was completed, the supervisor had to drive back, or the crew leader would drive back to the service center, get a data packet for the next job. Instead, what the team recommended and we implemented was purchasing laptops for the crews. So the non-driver in the truck would enter the data about the repair into the laptop and retrieve information for the next job, therefore eliminating the waste of transportation, overprocessing, motion, and waiting. As Adil said, they were simplifying and reducing the complexity of the process. The third one I call go fully loaded. And instead of one person doing a pre-trip inventory, a vehicle check, and retrieving job information right from the very first, they do parallel processing. Since there was a 3-member crew, one would do the inventory, one would do the check, and one would do the job data, so that you're exponentially reducing the amount of time to take care of that. The next one I call don't be stumped, just dump. For the Austin Water Utility, we have one site for all the spoils from excavation that has to be dumped. Now, given that we have 530 square miles of service area, you can see how this is an impediment to the speed of the repair. So now what we're in the process of implementing is multiple sites across our service area, and that will eliminate the waste of transportation and waiting. The next one I call is no, I'll take the sample. Previously, when a repair was complete, a supervisor would drive from the service center all the way out, take the water sample, and take it to the laboratory for testing. Now, a team crew leader who is already on site has been trained and will take the water sample. And the last one I call sharing is not for everyone. Now, previously, excavation equipment was shared among the crews, so they were waiting sometimes for others to finish. Now, all the crews have all the equipment they need to be able to make the repair. So now that we've covered those kind of improvements, what kind of results did we see from that? Let's take a look at each of the major components again. So first, we're going to take a look at scheduling. They did exceed the goal. They minimized wait time by doing two things. Instead, they had the dispatcher who receives the phone call about the leak conducting the one call after the leak is reported instead of the supervisor the following day. Second, for roaming permits, they would seek the permits twice a day instead of waiting again to the following day. In terms of documentation, minimizing that time, they eliminated the SharePoint site and the manual data sheets. For the service request updates, they used the laptops in the field to update the centralized databases instead of a supervisor during their lunch or doing at the end of the shift, updating goes. The next component was response time. In the response time improvements, immediately there was a 10% reduction in overall response time. Now, they didn't achieve the goal yet, mainly because major improvements are in the implementation process. The major improvements that are pending are: 1, adjusting schedules of the crews to match water leak demands. What we find is that there's actually a bimodal distribution of water main leak reports. So our crews come in 7, leave at 3, but we have another bimodal demand, which is somewhere between 2:30 p.m. to 11. So what we're going to be doing is creating a second shift to address that second set of water main leaks reports. The second major improvement that is pending is the redistribution of service coordinators. Now remember that the first responders that determine the equipment and the crews that are necessary from a central location. And so what we're going to do with those first responders, which are service coordinators, is put them in geographical grids so that they can respond in a much quicker way. The third major improvement is the parts are going to be made available for on-site repair. So we're in the process of that. Now, by looking at the chart, you can already tell that there has been some improvement. But significantly, if you look at the standard deviation, the team has shrunk that by more than half. Now let's take a look at the third component, which is repair time improvements. The goal was achieved, a 25% improvement. Remember that the average in 2008 was 7.2 hours. In May of 2009, which is the data we have available to us, is 5.4 hours. And, as you can see from the chart, they also decreased the standard deviation, getting rid of some of the outliers. So what's the bottom line? The bottom line is that the Austin Water Utility from these teams are saving more than $100,000 a year. From these experiences, the Austin Water Utilities were promoting what I call be the first penguin. First, do your homework. Document your processes. Use data. Determine where your current state is so that you can determine where you want to go. Second, the good of the many. You as an individual must make a personal effort, not only for your benefit, but the benefit of your work group and the organization, the good of the many. And for at the Austin Water Utility, you can either be pushed into lean, or what we were requesting is that you trust, you plunge into the process of improvements, you take that leap of faith, and focus on eliminating waste and complexity just as a normal way of doing business. Now that concludes our presentation. Adil, I see that we have a question. Do you want me to go ahead and take that?
Yes, please go ahead.
So the question is, what factor made the Kaizen so successful? Well, I think there's actually two. First, there was an immediate and positive response from upper management in the team presentations. Suggestions for items that cost money but brought great returns in productivity were immediately purchased, such as laptops. Management never said, well, we'll try to put that in the budget next year. There was no greater advertisement. The rumor mill spread, and people are starting to get excited and want to participate. Secondly, the scope of the process improvement was narrowly defined, and data was available to identify the current state and analyze the problem. We did not try to eat the elephant at one time by taking on the entire process at once. Adil, do you want me to take another question, or have you got one?
Please go ahead and start typing up questions. We have enough time to take a few more questions. I believe there is one more question here for you, Bart. Please go ahead.
Well, this question is, what is the most important aspect to a successful lean effort. And from my perspective, that's upper management support and a constant vigilance on them for focusing on continuous improvement.
I think there's one more question on complexity. Mark, can I take that?
Sure.
So it says, explain why complexity is the root cause of some of the issues. And I hope you agree with me that it takes time and effort to be simple than be more complex. I'll give you an example of this. There was a renowned author who submitted a manuscript to the publisher of 500 pages, and then he had a small note in there. I would have reduced it by half if I had enough time. And this is what is critical for us to understand, is it takes more time to be simple because you have to think through some of the issues and to be able to explain things in a more simple way. So complexity is not the sophistication we're looking for. It is the simplicity which brings which brings us all more sophistication. Bart, I think there is one more question for you. It says, is there any internal frustration on your part in explaining and implementing the new time-tested tools of Lean when all of them have existed for many years in TQM? How do you reconcile that? It's a very good question.
Well, I think you're right. There is a perspective of some people who have been with utility for a while of, yeah, we've heard this before, yeah, it's coming again in a different form, yada, 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 yada. And essentially what we have done is when we did our total quality management effort, we promoted the heck out of it right at first. And we trained everybody in the utility. Instead, with Lean, we're taking a different approach. We're letting the results speak for themselves. We're letting the line employees and the rumor mill work for us. And by showing people the results, that we're listening to employees because they know the process better than anyone else, that's what's changing things. So it's the way we approached it and the way we're implementing that I think is dealing with some of that kind of frustration and having people take a look at it in a different way.
If there are any follow-up questions, please feel free to do that. One more out here is, what was the duration of the Kaizen team in days, and how many continuous days are spread out over several weeks? I believe it refers to the case study, so I'll let Bart handle this one.
Could you say that one again? Sorry.
What was the duration of the Kaizen teams in days, and how many continuous days are spread out?
What I mentioned before, and this is our standard process, there are 5 days, Monday through Friday. So those people that are in the teams are not doing their daily work. They are in a conference room, and they're working, they're an 8-hour, 10-hour, 12 hours on the process improvement section of Lean and some of the tools. There's just-in-time learning, and then on Friday, they make their, Friday morning, they give a presentation to upper management.
You see a very nice question. It says, what is the optimum size of a Kaizen analysis team? How much time does it take to train a team to use Kaizen effectively?
From our perspective, it's about 5 to 7 people. Now, what we do is a little bit different. Those are your experts who have a continuous part of the process. What we do pull in during the week that the team is focusing on is what we call subject matter experts. So for example, we will pull in a finance person to take a look at the team's calculations for cost savings. So we have kind of a friend from finance. We may take other people who are affected by the process and pull them in to get their perspectives. So the optimum size for the team is 5 to 7, but we pull in people as needed. One of the other questions that I see is, how do you know whether you address the root cause for water main leaks? And you're correct in terms of that we focused on the speed of the response. The root cause of the problem is actually deteriorated water mains and the type of pipe that was used, cast iron. So we've changed our pipe specifications. We're going to increase the funding for replacement of those pipes, the 6-inch to 8-inch pipes, by 2 to 3-fold. But that's going to take several years to completely address the problem. Meanwhile, our customers have no patience for water leaks or lost water, particularly during mandatory conservation periods. So we must quickly respond and repair those water leaks as they're reported.
Take this one.
The question is the idea of overproduction as a source of waste in government does not ring true to me. Maybe I'm thinking about it incorrectly. Could you give some examples of overproduction in government that you've seen? Well, from my perspective, when we talked about the Kaizens, is where you take a look at how you're documenting processes and gathering data. We had a SharePoint site. We had manual documentation on boards and tons of reams of paper. We also had another part of gathering that data. So when you take a look at the complexity of that, then you need to simplify. And those are things that happen kind of like fungus. They grow over time, and you don't really realize it until you step back from the process, step away from the day-to-day work, and try to look at it from a different perspective. So that would be one example.
If you have any more questions, please feel free to type them out.
Here's another question. How long has the utility embraced the lean effort? Well, the impetus for the effort was our new director, Greg Meszaros from Fort Wayne, Indiana. And we started in 2009, and we're at the beginning of our effort. So we've completed 7 Kaizens thus far with an identified value of approximately $2 million.
Here is another one. Bart, I think I can take this. If lean is a universal tool, what are some unique areas you've seen lean implemented in successfully? And personally, I've implemented lean in very different industries and also in different applications. Obviously, the most obvious is manufacturing for taking care of quality problems or setup reduction or efficiency increases. But I've also applied it in the transactional area, including human resources, marketing, order entry, document control, and lean has also been very successfully used in energy waste reduction. So, I personally have not seen an area where at least some of the lean tools cannot be applied directly.
I'll take this next question. How do you communicate your results? We do that in several different ways. First, with the results of the Kaizen, we have those results go into our monthly news summary out.
Convince your management to say, not only am I going to train the team in that 5 days, but we are going to focus on one problem and solve it. Now you have no problem getting upper management support, because not only is the team going to learn the lean tools, but you will also during that week solve a problem, but most important, you will actually be teaching them how to fish, so they will be able to learn these tools and then apply it to the areas the following weeks.
If I can add on to that, Adil, it really takes upper management, at least your director, to drive the process. It was very clear when Greg came in is, yes, we will be doing lean, and yes, we will be doing these Kaizens. Now, was there skepticism about that and pulling people off? Oh, sure. But once the first Kaizen happened, and once the management saw the types of benefits that came out of that, then you started having the skeptics starting to die off and having converts happen. And so it made it much easier for the next one. and the next one, and the next one.
There's one more good question. It says 5 days in a group meeting, but how much time before in prep, data collection, and how much time in actual improvement execution and proving that it will last over time? This is a question which has two answers. Initially, you will, as people are learning, the learning curve is going to be a little steep. So the first event you hold is going to be a little more challenging. There will definitely be a little more prep involved. You'll have to do the selection of the right people. But once you have the team in place who've gone through 1, 2, or 3 Kaizen events, or just lean events which last a day, the prep will dramatically reduce. But it will also depend on what type of event you're having. If it's something major which is going to impact the whole division or the company or the area you're going to work in, you may have to change your schedule around to make sure. For example, if it's a setup event, you want to make sure that the machine would be ready, or the equipment or some of the HVAC equipment would be available during that week for the repairs or for updates. So there is definitely some planning on the front end. On the back end, at the end of every event, we end up leaving some metrics behind. So basically what you do is you will hand off the metrics to the area supervisor, who then can take and run with these metrics and basically implement, make sure that they are tracking it, and if anything is going out of control, they are immediately able to call a meeting or take some immediate action to make sure that everything goes on track.
If I can add to
Sure,
that,
absolutely.
please, for our experience. In terms of our facilitators, we found it takes about 1 to 3 weeks of prep work, and that's not 40 hours a week. It's just getting hold of people, them taking time to gather data. So you really have to, that's where the homework has to happen, because you will not have as successful a Kaizen if the process is very broad, if it's not very clear where the start and the end of the process is, or you don't have data. So the prep work is probably one of the most important aspects of that. Now, in terms of afterwards, there is a series of what we call action items for the Kaizen teams, of things that they have to implement that, and those are followed on monthly basis by the executive team to make sure those are getting done. And we have our internal audit group that's going to be coming back generally about 6 months to a year after the Kaizen to verify that the cost savings that were identified by the team have actually worked. Now, let me add one other thing, Adil, if I could. I just want to ask this question, and I don't think I fully answered it. A Kaizen for us is 5 days. It's a full week. Now, you may ask, well, is everything a Kaizen? No, no. You have some things that what we call is go-do items. You get out there, you improve it, you change it. You don't need to have a bunch of people get together and for 5 days. The other thing that may happen, and we have our facilitators help out with some of this, is that some of these issues may be just like a 1 day, but they're not a full Kaizen. It may be just some brainstorming and coming up with some specific ideas or helping facilitate a group. But a true Kaizen is looking at a process, you're using data, it's usually cross-functional, and that for us takes a full week.
Okay, so I think it's time to say goodbye to everyone. I hope you've got a few valuable nuggets of knowledge from this, or at least got some food for thought from this presentation. Before you sign off, I would request if you can kindly write down a number from 0 to 10, 0 being you did not get anything out of this presentation, and 10 being it was at least, you got a few nuggets or you got some food for thought from this. I will greatly appreciate it. Thank you again. Signing off, Adil and Bart, thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it.